faster.
You guys are live. So, what's going on, everybody? I don't know if there's anybody yet, but we're getting ready to talk about some pretty cool stuff. I'll wait till people get in here. I don't know. I had a little bit of a trouble on the first one, and there were some people waiting in that, and I don't know if they came up, but it looks like, hey, there's Roger. Awesome. We got Roger. We got 351 Cleveland. We got Evan TV. What's up? Class is in session. Creole catfishing. What's up, Troy? We got Art. Woohoo! We got Sean Abney and Big John. Big John. It's going too fast for my old eyes to see. We got Steve Mosley. We got 351. We got Mike Turner. We got Chucky Morgan. Here they come. That's right. Evans going on. Muskrat. Jason Lamb. Hey, Rob, it's Tool Vets. So you tune in with for the old guys like me, especially, don't you? Hey, El Catfish Grande. Okay, so we'll give it a little bit of time. I think there's 9 people in here right now, and I will tell you what we got up in store. We've got some new stuff. If you couldn't tell by the thumbnail, I kind of re-rigged my my lights for the rods, and I think that's going to have them last a long time. But we'll get into that in a minute. We're going to do a little bit of Walmart special type stuff. We got that. We got some little craft wire, and then we have. Now I realize what these are called for real. They're called fairy lights, but I call them donkey lights. So we're gonna deal with that a little bit. We're gonna talk about what's going on. Well, we're gonna talk a lot about what you guys want to know, and we'll see. Hey, Central Valley. We're going to see if I know the answers to them. I would like to be able to call some people up, but I don't have any clue how to do that yet. I think I'm going to have to ask Creole or Roger or all those guys that do that. I have no idea. Maybe there's a button we can do in a little bit. Maybe somebody can tell me exactly what's going on. But I certainly am not the professional at this yet. But I will learn it because I'm, like pretty much everybody knows, no, I'm not on StreamYard. I'm on the YouTube app. I don't know. Is StreamYard the only way to get people up? I have no idea. Mr. Kitty Whiskers, what's going on? Mr. Kitty Whiskers is on TikTok, and it's been kind of fun so far. I've done a few TikTok, I don't know, 40, 50 videos, and a bunch of them you guys have seen the actual, entire video. So I don't like try to like post them or anything like that because okay, for the most part. Okay, won't be able to bring anyone up through the YouTube. All right, so I'll have to listen to that. I'll give you a call, Roger. Yeah, Tim, you're straight through YouTube, so you can't bring anyone up, only StreamYard. Well, I can do the StreamYard thing. I just didn't do it this time because StreamYard doesn't like my signal. It doesn't like my signal at all. Now, the YouTube app, I can do that on the river. I can do it in some surprising places, but StreamYard, it just doesn't like it. But once I get my, and that's supposed to happen sometime in the next, and you know how things are right now. Sometime in the next 2 weeks, they're supposed to get out here and try to fix my signal. I don't know if it's a song and a prayer or what, but hopefully, and they say they can. Yeah, they called me today and they said, well, would you like to pay for that in advance? I said, ma'am, I don't even know what they're going to do yet. Well, she's like, well, it's a service call. I says, where do you live at? She said she was somewhere in the East Coast or whatnot. And I said, well, if you'd ever been to Stark County, Illinois, you know that people pay for things and we do what we say. So send the guy out and we'll get that figured out. Oh, that's kind of, why is that backwards? That's weird. I suppose it would be backwards. That's kind of goofy. I didn't notice that before. You know, see my the old epic catfish thing. Have the words always been backwards when you guys are doing lives? If you write, that's kind of interesting. That fishing guy, nice, Mike Turner. Okay, but Roger, is it always? I mean, when you write something, does it always come in the thing backwards? Hey, Tina Ladybug, outdoors with Otis is in the house. Fat boy catfishing. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, we're up 25 already. I don't know. Maybe we get up to 30 and start the show here. I guess outdoors. Yeah, yeah, yeah. V3's in the house. Annette Morgan. Hey, what's going on? You know, I am still pinching myself at how many people are like awesome people in this thing. I mean, the whole catfish community is great, and y'all know I've been on TikTok a little bit, and the lives are way different. I mean, I've never done a lot. Well, I did get called up for a live, uh, but the comments are so they fly by so fast, and like people they don't evidently they don't have followings because people don't really like follow somebody and know what's going on, and they don't really know anybody else in chat. And I'm not saying it's young people because I don't really think it is. I mean, there's a lot of TikTok that's young people, but you know, Lynn, I don't know, is that Lynn Leaper? Holy moly. Alvin Lewis. Hey, what's going on? That damn fishing guy V3. All right, we're up to 40. Did I say 40 or did I say 50? Hey, what's up, Kevin? All right, so I guess I could start this by having somebody in the chat ask something what's going on right now. Because what's going on right, hey, Leroy Honeycutt, what's going on right now is perplexing a lot of people. And depending on what part of the country you're in, it's going to be a little bit confusing, especially blue cats. Channel cats are generally about the same. Flatheads are generally about the same unless you get into the really warm period. What's happening, Stilly? But blue cats have this propensity to have this really varied response to the cold water period. And we all know some people are catching giant fish, some people aren't catching giant fish, some people are catching big fish shallow, fast rise in the water. Let's see here, fast rise in the water, where my blue's going. Okay, I'll take that into consideration there, Roger. We could start there. Matter of fact, I've got something drawn here on my new whiteboard. I went and built an easel today, which I pretty much show you. It's all made of old barnwood, and actually some of it's made from my old deck that I used to have on the house that I built 25 years ago. All right. So let me see if we can get up close to this thing. I'll drag it in close, and then I'll put it back. All right, Roger, fill me in on what situation you're talking about. Are you talking about a river or are you talking about a lake? Define prepensitive. Well, Kevin, it's actually propensity. That means the likelihood or the proclivity or the situation. You know what? I have my new tooth, but I certainly haven't put it in because I talk like Daffy Duck after that. But yeah, proclivity, that's what we have, or propensity. Let's see. So Roger's got the first question that I've noticed. Heading to the dam in the morning, cranking 140. Okay, perfect, Roger. Let me fast forward on this. And so if you have any questions, just wait until I get this done because I'll miss it like by a long way. Okay, so here we have, let me see if I can get this down a little bit. There we go. All right, so we've got a dam situation right here. And below the dam, especially like Roger said, if it's running at a huge CFMs, in the cold water period, that's not necessarily what I would target. Unless I've got a situation where downstream of the dam, it can go into a bend. See this nice bend right here? It's really not even a hard bend. It's just a little bit of a bend. Rivers like the Ohio and the Tennessee, oftentimes somewhere below the dam, you might have 30 foot, you might have 20 foot of just screaming current, but you'll get into these little pockets where it'll usually lead into a, and I hope you guys can see this, it'll lead into a small trough, but it'll widen out and flow downriver. Now, sometimes it's a hard drop. Let's see if you guys can see. This is a good spot right here. Sometimes you got the top of the water, and you might have 20 foot, and sometimes it's a hard drop. Sometimes it's almost a straight down drop, but a lot of times it just dribbles in. So you've got straight down drop from 20, 25, down to maybe at the head of it, it only goes to 30. If it's more of an intermediate, it will go down into about 35, 40, or it will straight up plummet. Now that's more rare. You see stuff like that on the Tennessee River and the Mississippi more than you do the Ohio. The Ohio is generally more like this, where it's 20 to 25, and it might feed into a hole over 200 to 300 yards, and that hole will just sort of dribble into it because it really only makes that hole during the highest water, like that really crazy stuff where nobody fishes. Okay, let me read the chat just a little bit. Okay, we got Dave Garchar, we got Dam Fishing, we got 3+1. You know, thanks for coming in, everybody. We've got 50 awesome people in chat. Yep. Okay, so to get back to Roger's question. So when a dam, and especially if it's more like a lake pool up here, where it's deep and slow, but yet they open the dam gates, and all of a sudden your CFMs almost double down here. So when the CFMs double, it takes every fish that's running around in here kind of loose, and usually either puts them in that close eddy. This is the winter time. Now, if it was the summertime, it would be different. But this is the winter time, so don't get those two confused. Hey, Pontoon Jody, 3+1, Mike Turner. Okay, so basically, when the water's low in the wintertime, they can, especially these flats, these 5 to 15 foot flats right in here. They'll go from here, they may come up and feed, they may do this, they may be getting in this one eddy because they've got these gates kind of shut down more than this central middle. So that central middle flows really hard through here. But a lot of times all these fish will go downstream and settle into one of these bigger, what I would call a basin hole. And so a basin hole is, when the water's up, it's just a little bit slower, or maybe even a lot slower. Now, when the water's low, there's still fish in this basin hole, but they usually hang, in my experience, they usually hang out in this area right here. That's the main channel, possibly 25, 30, 40 foot. And then where it starts to bump down, and you'll see this on the side. So we're talking about, not only does the front right here drop hard or dribble in, you've got the sides. And that's what everybody calls ledges. So ledges are the thing that when you're looking downriver, you go from maybe 10 or 15 foot of water and just sort of plummet into 25 or 30. And that's what most catfishermen call a good ledge. So that is one place to target when that water goes from low normal to high water. And they will stack all the way up that ledge. And let me try to draw that for you. And let's see where we can do it. We can do it right up here. So you've got the bank right here. You got the bank. just goes into, maybe 10, 15, and then all of a sudden it goes like maybe like this, okay? And then you got the bottom main channel. So there'll be actually catfish stacked on this ledge at all levels. Because what it does is it compresses the water and kind of pins it up along the bank. So a lot of food and bait fish will actually, by the current, just sort of tumble. Sunfish assassin, you're awesome. Thank you very much. So, and I'm going to get more excited as this thing goes. It's been a while since I've talked this. But, okay, so especially on a bend where the river, you got some straight line current coming from a dam, and all of a sudden it kind of bends like this. It'll start to compress that. And I recently kind of learned a new term for that. And I was talking to Flint Hill Catfishing over the phone. And since I was talking to Flint Hill, he's a kayak guy. Oh, and look, is Flint Hill in here right now? Holy moly. So Flint Hill taught me a vocabulary word. And it's called heavy water. And that is what these guys talk about. If you got shallow, fast water, that is not classified as heavy water. It's that deep water that it creates a lot of push. And so that shallow, fast water, you can keep baits down. It's pretty easy to, target fish. It's pretty easy to, do. I mean, you got to move because there's not all that much habitat, and you're going to have less fish per anchor. But if you get into this heavy water, so you've got water. If it's shallow, it's fairly lightweight, right about 8 pounds a gallon. Every time you go down a foot, or I think it's a foot and a half, it's been a long time since I've done the math, but that water starts to get heavier and heavier because it gets compressed. It's kind of interesting. Air is generally fairly thick at the surface of the planet, but as you go up, it starts to space itself, the molecules space themselves out. The same thing is doing that with water. So if you think about how things are going in this current or even in a lake, the deeper you go, the heavier that water is and the more force it has. And you would think that a blue cat or a flathead or a channel cat would kind of stay into that lightweight water. Not necessarily true, because they'll get acclimated, their swim bladder compresses. Matter of fact, their swim bladder in 40, 50 foot of water is about 25% the size that it is by the time you catch them. So that's kind of an interesting thing. So, and the swim bladder has compartments. We may talk about that a little bit later, but I got to pay attention to what's going on here. But so Roger, your normal summer spots, heavy water, heavy flow, slow, pontoon Jody, you are awesome. Everybody's awesome in here, but I really thank you for that donation, because it lets me get stuff like this that I showed a little bit earlier. So we got a little light pack right here. Oh, that's not even the one. I don't know where it went. There it is. Got the little light pack. Look at that craziness. These things are pretty crazy. And later remind me to show you the rods that I've got that figured out. How about on a lake, where can I find the blues at? That is the quintessential question. And the quintessential question about lakes is they move a lot. My biggest thing about lakes is time on the water, and it is marking fish and thinking about whether they're going to be up near where the water spills through the dam or up into the creeks and tributaries. Now, a lot of this that's going on right now, and all you have to do is watch YouTube to prove it to yourself, is that although big blues in the wintertime will hold in 100-foot holes, they'll hold in 50-foot holes, but they'll also go shallow. And they go shallow in a short amount of time, and then they're up in that shallow, and then especially during a stable weather period, 2-3 days of decent weather. But if it gets like super shut down cold at night, they'll move right back to the deep water, and it'll be a constant, back and forth, and that can make things difficult for people to constantly be on fish, especially if they only have weekends. So when I do the winter blue cat fishing in lakes, like fishing. Now, once you get south, it's a little bit different. You get into Palmetto's area, it's a little bit different than it is up here. But you go to Lake of the Ozarks, and Lake of the Ozarks, it can be very cold. I tend to go into pinch down areas where there's stone, where the sun shines on the stone, and that it'll be deep 60, 50, 45, and then somewhere on the inside is going to have somewhat of a shallow flat, all the way up to like 3 foot of water. Becca, oh my gosh, yeah, you are fantastic. Always love the information. Oh, gosh, that disappears so fast. Wishing you a new year filled with laughter, silliness, blessings, and many cherished memories. Becca, I do love the Christmas time of year. It was always a fantastic time with my parents. It was always a fantastic time with my friends. And, it has been no different this year. And I hope everybody is going to have just a fantastic 2022. And yeah, I hope to be doing some captain's logs about 2022 and how fantastic the fishing is. Yep, Becca's awesome. What a great promoter and a supporter of the catfish community. I mean, I see her in all kinds of lives, just like you guys. But I mean, she's really, yeah. So anyway, let's get back to Roger's finite question, because Roger's finite question is a question that everybody has, and especially the one about lakes. Where do I find blues in the winter in lakes? Sometimes you got to go to the windward, like sometimes if the wind's blowing from south to north, you want to be on the north side. And there were some guys that I fished with for like a couple days, and they fished on Texoma. And Texoma, I had actually contacted them through, or they contacted me, or however it was, through the ProCats website before this even happened. But he ended up catching the 121-pound world record in like I can't even remember the date, but it was a big fish. And he ended up catching it in 4 foot of water on that lake. And he wasn't using donkey baits. It was in the winter. Love the captain's log. Thanks, Wild Turkey. I like doing it because, I get a chance to let people know what's in my head, when I'm doing all this stuff. Let me back this up for a minute. And seriously, a lot of what the success on the end of your rod is how much passion, how much time, how much you're going to grit it out, and then making those smart decisions where you're going to go to catch monsters. And like I said before, a lot of people, they want to go fish, they want to have a good time. That's great, and I don't mind that. Barometer pressure, we're going to try to get to that. Okay, I should start jotting these down. Okay, barometer pressure. All right, barometer, we got that. Anybody else real quick? Did I miss any questions? Because I'll just make a list of them up there. Best rig to use in the wintertime. Okay, we'll go over that. All right, what else we got? We should probably do them about three at a time. We plan to go live, so this is Roger, put this information to use. All right. What's up, Chucky, Lizabilla, Kirkpatrick, Aaron Gibson. I have a friend by the name of Aaron Gibbons, but okay. All right. Fat Boy Fishing, thank you very much for the donation and the question. How about barometric pressure? I'm just trying to see if I missed anything. I think Troy mentioned something up here when I was talking. And I think he said something that's like the Dead Sea where he fishes. Give me a thumbs up if I recall that correctly. Hey, Paw Ed. You guys are awesome. All right. So for the one last thing, let's just put that up there. I kind of get that in my mind, and I've seen that where you go fishing in your normal spots in the winter, especially when yeah, we can talk about the moon phase. Okay. Nice, Flint Hill. All right, so moon phase and the Dead Sea. All right, so let me get a paper towel and erase all this stuff so we can start kind of fresh. So I guess I better learn how to write backwards. Is that right? 7856. Oh yeah, 7756 thumbs up. That's awesome. There's Paw Ed. I don't know if I can do this here or not. Yeah, I can. Look at that. I can add a moderator right during the old feed. Epic Cat. Hey, there's Laura the Explorer. Hope you had a great Christmas. Looking forward to your adventures in this new and upcoming year. Thank you, Laura. I enjoy watching your lives. You got a lot of passion. You got a lot of charisma on that bank. I wish I could steer you to big fish habitat, but of course we all love watching you. Roger, see you at 6:30. Oh yeah, go catch some. Oh, Roger and Zach are fishing again. Okay, so let me get to this. Yeah. Oh yeah. How about some tips on finding collateral catfish when they are so tight to the bottom? Oh boy. Now, Brian Brake, let's talk about that. So, finding catfish hugged to the bottom. All right, so we've got a little note on that. Flint Hill. Oh yeah, yeah, guys, feel free to put up links all you want. The more people that get to experience. Thanks, Thomas, for the New Year's wishes. Happy New Year to you too. The more, I believe, the more people that get to experience. Now, it could backfire, but I believe more people that get to enjoy the YouTube catfish community itself, because it's different than all the other ones. I think there'll be hooks and hammocks. Chris, you're awesome, and Telly. Yeah, looking forward to hanging out at CatCon again. Yeah, that's going to be pretty cool, because I'm fixing to put on the dog and pony show at that one. There'll be more props and more crazy stuff, and we'll talk about some of the same stuff, but yet in a different location. We'll be talking about basically, how to catch the biggest fish in the river and what you think about and what you're going to try to do, tips, rigs, and whatever. And I'm going to really try to get to more answers this time. I don't know if I'll be talking 2 days or one. I assume 2. What do we got here? Aaron, after talking to him on live TikTok, I am using big bait now. Awesome. That's awesome, Aaron. Okay, so that's where I know Aaron from. See, like Aaron, 351 Cleveland, thank you for the $5. Boom, it's a boom. I gotta start doing boom, 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 like them other guys do. No, I don't think I will, but no, I mean, here it is. So we got Aaron Gibson, and Aaron, since you're from TikTok, if you haven't been on YouTube, you will see some of the greatest people with the biggest hearts you ever wanted to see. And I think it's fantastic. So if everybody can share information and, share what they're doing and talk about stuff, because I've never seen any of the people in here be cross about anything. Uh-oh. Yeah. Lost his TikTok. All right. So let's get to one of these questions real quick. All right. Well, Aaron, feel free to put your link up if you can. Maybe you can't. Maybe somebody else could put Aaron's link up. I haven't seen his stuff yet, or maybe I have. Okay, so let's get to the first one. Which one is the short-winded one? The moon phase. Moon phase is the short-winded one because it has a control. The moon phase does have a control over catfish. There's no doubt. It has a control over everything. But as far as being able to quantify that control, there's only a few things that I've figured out Mike Turner will take care of you, Aaron. So there's only a few things I have figured out in 30 years. Flatheads do not like the moon bright once it clips the trees and starts shining on the water, unless you're in super deep water. Anything under about 15 foot, and there's a lot of big flatheads in 15 foot or less, the bite goes south like nobody's business. But you've got that period from when it gets dark to where that moon comes up and shines on the water to do a good thing. Now, it's not that I haven't caught big fish, but the odds of catching giant fish during a full phase moon shining right on the water, even the Mississippi, goes down by 50, 60, 70%. Now, the one thing that we do know is that the moon pulls on the oceans, okay? And that's obvious because we can see it. But it also pulls on rivers. And if you think about it, water, no matter what, well, I'm not saying water can't be heavier than stone, because it certainly can be, especially at depths. So and usually this falls true. It rings true. The deeper that I fish, the less the moon phase has an effect. And when I look back on my life, doing the kinds of things, I've always done better in 30, 40 foot of water at night when there's a full moon. All right, and I didn't even know why then, but it kind of makes sense, and maybe I'm guessing at things, but once you get several atmospheres of deep water pounded down into that, I think the moon's pull has less effect on the gravity. Now, that's just a human view trying to make sense of something that I've seen evidence to. But there's still no doubt about the moon and how it affects flatheads. Now, with blues, it doesn't seem to affect them as much. I have, on occasion, caught several mega giants on a full moon. But that doesn't mean that I love knowing about Flint Hill, that's awesome. You guys are fantastic. So to get back to this full moon thing in blues, it has an impact. I'm just not positive of whether it's, I think it has a cycle, honestly. I think it has a cycle that it could be good or bad during certain parts of the year, especially the 4 calendar periods we got. We got the fall, we've got the fall to winter transition, you got the full wintering period where, in most of the country they're just fully wintered, and then you've got East Coast, West Coast, and southern part of the United States that they're actually depressed as far as their body temperature, but yet they will go through great periods of activity where they go from deep water and just sort of sitting there to going up in that shallow water and attacking the crap out of stuff. I mean, you've seen it with, I mean, and I haven't watched a lot of YouTube, but I just know. I mean, when it comes across my feed, Ryan Bortz is catching PB after PB after PB. You know, Brian B just caught a monster. So we know that blues actively feed. But in some parts of the country where it gets devastatingly cold, like mine, it can be very rough. Now, I'm not saying I couldn't go down there tomorrow where I fish 4 hours away, down by St. Louis, and have a shot at catching some big fish. But I'm going to freeze my tail off doing it, and the likeliness of it is very low. Thanks, Don Johnson. Happy New Year to you, too. So, we could go into like serious depth about the full moon, but I don't think we need to go any further. We just know that the full moon affects flatheads. It affects blues and it affects flatheads negatively. Blues, it's still out for discussion on whether the full moon does. All I can tell you is that I do not catch as many giant fish. I'll still catch fish, but I'll catch as many giant fish with a full-on moon. And I'll tell you how I know this, because I would love to, because I don't really love fishing in the dark. I prefer daytime, actually, because I like to see the whole thing. I like to see the rods go down without them being just lit up. And, okay, so let me, and I'll get back to that. Sorry, where did you come to know so much about catfishing? Laura, because, and it's a long history story. I was kind of a catfish psycho slash savage, you know, at a young age, like 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, because I'd been exposed to an area that had big flatheads. It was below Shelbyville Dam, which is in about mid-Illinois. And so, and let me try to tell this story really quickly. The first flathead I ever saw was about 40 pounds, and it was really bigger than me at that time, and it was this big, ugly beast. And I was the sort of kid that when I watched Godzilla versus King Kong, I rooted for Godzilla. I liked the snakes and the, you know, dinosaurs. Oh, I was a huge dinosaur kid. I mean, I could, by the time I was like 2.5 or 3, I could tell you, you know, what a lot of the popular dinosaurs were. And I had books, and I had the dinosaur stuff, and I even had a little remote control dinosaur that I used to scare the crap out of my sister with. But I just, you know, I didn't care about deer. They were too pretty looking. I wanted to deal. I was the monster kid, the kid that just loved that stuff. I liked the scary movies. Kong bows to no one, Murillo says. That's awesome. But anyway, make a long story short, and I don't know, I mean, I'll miss a lot, but by the time I was probably, well, I was old enough to basically ride my own bike. I used to come from town, which is about 3 miles that way. And I used to ride my bike with all my gear strapped to it. There was no bungee cords in those days. It was like old rope and crap. So I used to tie up all this stuff, and I'd drive all the way out to where I live now, and I would fish the spoon for channel cats. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but every once in a while I'd get lucky. And I'd be, you know, I kept them at that point, and I'd put them on a stringer. So, you know, I've got all my crap, and I'm driving on a main, you know, riding my bike on a main highway. And a lot of times the townspeople, somebody with a truck or a farmer that knew me or knew my family or whatever, and sometimes they knew me and sometimes they didn't know me. They'd give me, you know, they'd feel sorry for me because I got 4 or 5 catfish hanging off my handlebars and stuff like that. So, you know, as it went, I got more and more into it. And then I got more and more into having fish tanks, because I bought my first 55-gallon fish tank at an auction that I went to with my parents when I was like, I don't know, 12 or 13. And, you know, I had to get catfish in there. The monster kid who grew up, yep, that's right. And so you know, I started bringing catfish home, and I had a lot of different fish. I had chubs, and I caught snapping turtles, and I put those in there and watched all that stuff eat. And, you know, I'm not even into high school yet. And so, I just started fishing more and more, and it of course came to an obsession level. And so this obsession level grew and grew until, gosh, in high school, if girls wanted to date me, which surprisingly, as ugly as this thing turned out and old, there was quite a few back in the day. But I just said no. I mean, I would do a few things, but I'm like, if you want to see me, you got to go out on the river with me. Because by that time, I had my own boat and all this stuff. And believe it or not, I vetted a bunch of them. Because if they were scared of bugs or, they just didn't have, I mean, I wasn't even as good at fishing as I am now by far. But I could still catch some fish. But if they were bothered by bugs and hair and all this, I'm like, you're out. You're out. So I just kind of vetted that. You're done. And, if you want to see me, we're going to the woods, we're going fishing, and I used to do a lot of camping. And, I'd pull up on a sandbar and throw the rods out and sleep a little bit and, whatnot. I went up to Shelbyville Dam one time, and there was a lot of people trying to get there. And it's a small dam. There's only 2 places to park up there. And if you want to catch flatheads, you're tied up to the wall, and there'd be people they'd launch, they'd come, and they'd hover and wait for you to leave. I once stayed for 3 days straight. I ate on the boat, I slept on the boat, and we had a 5-gallon bucket, and that's how it was. But so yeah, if I was going to drive 3 hours, which that was my 3-hour trip to go catch flatheads, I was pretty psycho about it. And then later, and I'm skipping a whole bunch. Trust me, I'm skipping a whole bunch. Later, I started a website because I found that there wasn't much information out there that was correct. A lot of the magazine stuff was, they'd kind of hit at it a little bit, but there was a whole lot of fairy tales, and nobody was really telling a good, solid. And the reason I know this is because I would read articles and say, oh, I'm going to go try that. And they were so far off, thanks Fishing with JBT, I could not duplicate, even after I got better at catfishing, I couldn't duplicate the kind of things that they said worked all the time. And then I started noticing that they were missing that equation. And so by this time, I'm like in high school, late high school, on my way to college, doing all this other stuff. So I, after I was pretty much out of college is when I started ProCats. So, I mean, it was actually quite a ways after that. But at the whole time, I started noticing that. I wanted to write some stories about stuff, but nobody asked me to. Yeah, it's quite the thing. But I wanted to, and I kept formulating this stuff in my head. And it took me a long time to figure out that equation that I coined. That actually, I mean, and I'm not the one that said it, but there's been other people that said that catfish equation was the biggest breakthrough in being able to catch numbers of fish and big fish. See ya, Aaron. Numbers and big fish consistently, and it kind of started in pieces, and I ended up finishing by the time I was through college, of which I studied fisheries biology, ichthyology, hydrodynamics, all of that stuff, because that's what I was interested in. And I had speech classes, I had speech classes and English classes, and I had term papers and all this stuff, and I talked every one of my teachers into letting me write it about catfish. I talked most of my professors into letting me do studies on whether catfish could see color and whether they change their location according to current and how much pressure affects them and how big their systems are. And I was even able to, in high school, bring in my own stuff, which it was kind of unheard of. Hey, what's up, catfish regulators? I've got your rod set up with the donkey lights, so we're gonna take a visit at that a little bit later. But so to make a long story short, again, I'm gonna skip over a whole bunch of other stuff. I did that equation, and then I started guiding, and then once I started guiding, I had the website, and so people started calling me like regular magazine outlets and news agencies, and I ended up going on television shows up in the Chicago area and all this stuff because I wrote my stuff like I talk now, and they knew because I backed it up with information before. I didn't just spit out something that says if you want to catch catfish you got to do this. It was always a methodical thing, but I tried to keep it. Hey, Bill Hamilton, what's up, brother? Yeah, see, Bill Hamilton knows. He was actually involved a little bit. I mean, he was the little brother of my webmaster, actually. Uh, so what up, Billum? That's awesome. So, make a long story short, I mean, jeepers, we had an online magazine and we did all kinds of crazy stuff. And I traveled all over the country and I fished with people. And then North American Fishermen asked me to write for them, to be a contributing editor. And once I did that, that was pretty cool. But it opened my eyes. It opened my eyes to the fact that regular magazines, they don't want to really hear the truth. They want something that's kind of newsworthy. They want that crazy stuff, that stuff where, if people are, okay, so I would have to submit a list of articles. If I wrote 10 articles a year, I would, list about 20 different articles. And every time they would want to pick the one that sounded impossible. They wanted the goofy stuff. They wanted flatheads on crankbaits, or they wanted cormorant, and the goofy baits, and So I just quit. I quit even entertaining them on that. I just said, here it is. I want to talk about how to catch big blues in the winter. I want to talk about how to catch big flatheads in the in the summer and the spring and all that stuff. What up, Bobcat? I want to write about what people are going to be able. Yeah, I have been standing kind of close to this. I want to write about about things that people can duplicate and they can, So it wasn't necessary. It was and I haven't talked about it in so long. The sensationalism that needed to come out of catfish articles so that people could actually get to the root of it and start to do better. Because otherwise it was just fairy tales and wild goose chases. So then, I'll fast forward a bunch, leave a bunch of stuff out. In the meantime, I did a whole bunch of studies with the DNR. I was actually involved with a bunch of DNR studies in my late college years, and then even after. We volunteered a bunch of stuff for catfish studies, and I believe we're personally partly responsible for some of the regulations that happened on the Missouri, down on the Mississippi, in Missouri. Some of the stuff, and I don't know if Kentucky's still doing it, but the Fox River, regulations. I'm not saying that I was like a signer of the Catfish Declaration of Independence, but I was putting pressure on them at the same time. I was constantly putting pressure, and we were constantly, getting large groups of people together, and we were having people, and there was actually a few writers on our side. There was writers down, from Kansas, Missouri, things like that. But the DNR itself was a giant stumbling block because it's more of a political position than anything. It's a bunch of bureaucrats that do whatever they want. So that kind of frustrated me. But there was other things that frustrated me about running a website that was I don't know how to say it, pretty much like a nonprofit type thing. A lot of people trying to take credit for what, you do and blah, blah, blah. And there was, hey, what's up, Kelly Bullock? So there was some problems. And back in the day, a lot of the conservation stuff, catch, photo, and release was just coming into view. It was just whatever. And there was a lot of controversy with that. And so the controversy, besides the fact I'd had my firstborn son, I said, you know what? I can't do it anymore. Cannot do it anymore. My heart was in it. I needed to switch over my finances to actually making money so I could raise these kids because, I kept a cheap house and cheap vehicles and all that so I could fish. So I had to turn that around, and I did. And so I went basically dark for about 20 years. Then Sean, Catfish Heroes, talked me into coming back out of the light and getting into YouTube. So here it is. And sorry if I bored everybody with that kind of stuff. I mean, some people find it interesting, some people find it boring. I see we lost, 4 or 5 people. Let me get back to fishing. Let's do that. What we really want to hear about. All right, so we took care of the moon phase. Let's talk about next. Let's find some cats hugged to the bottom. Okay, let me answer some questions or make some comment stuff. Roger, Mike Turner, Wild turkey, epic. I had a professor that had us go into the research about Hubbard Brook forest regarding nutrient flow through the ecosystem. I am a nerd at that stuff too. Yeah, that stuff will really bore some people. But you know what? It's got a context, and it is interesting how the nutrients flow from the backwaters and where they stack up and stuff like that. And actually, it's part of learning where to catch pelagic bait fish, especially those that eat algae and plankton. But let's not go down that super road. Hey, Jason Ward. Yep, it is. I am glad to be back. Regulators. Oh, Leroy Honeycutt. That's awesome. Okay. Tim was a gremlin. What does that mean, Roger? I did not drive a gremlin. I actually drove a stupid Chevy Chevette for a while, believe that or not. It was like the cheapest vehicle you could get that was fairly new. Ethan E., where are you guys doing a lot of radio? Oh, yeah, we did do a lot of radio telemetry work, and a lot of times it did get published. And I'm not saying it got published the right way, because I was involved in the studies, I read the data on the studies, and it kind of got a little bit too simplified. They actually missed some things. Yeah, Whiskers and Stripes, it's pretty awesome. Okay. If you couldn't tell, I got the bifocals because the magnifying is like down here, so I end up going like that. So, all right, let's get to the next topic up on the board. Up on the board right here is finding cats hugged to the bottom. Now, for years, that was a tough thing. That was a really tough thing, especially with graphs that looked like Space Invaders. I mean, it was just a gray screen with black dots. You couldn't see like a blue aura around an orange object that's laying on the bottom. It's still, a lot of times you can't. That is difficult, even with some of the best technology that is available. Caught several channel cats and blues. Okay, catfish regulators. Aaron, big fish and the green rod for the new year. Oh, I got to get this out for Aaron. Aaron, look at this setup here. We've got the lights on it. We've got the super giant reel. I mean, this thing catch a marlin as long as it wasn't 1,500 pounds. But so yeah, that's going to be pretty interesting. I'm slowly getting them all lighted up with my new program. So what I did was I took these, and sorry to get off track about marking them on the bottom. I'll try to get back to that. But I took some fish tank hose, and I unwind this, and I put this wire through that hose, and I pull this through this these donkey lights, as you can see. And then I have, I don't even know what you call it, heat shrinked the end that goes up to the top of the rod. And then I've even taken bigger shrink tube and put around this, and then this is at the bottom. Let me try to show you that a second. Well, I might as well just get Aaron's green rod. Okay, so let's see if you guys can see this here. So here's the tube, which keeps that waterproof. Then I've used these zip ties to put it on because I don't want to glue it because it still needs to be able to move. And then here is this whole thing put this way so that right here, see the little switch right there? I can still get in there, but it doesn't rain. Because the first time I put these on, we were in upper Wisconsin on the Mississippi River, and it rained for like 2 days straight on us. And yeah, it kind of messed them up. Because they're not really meant for outdoors, but I'm kind of, yeah, we're all cat fishermen. We have forced things that weren't meant for, doing hardly anything outdoors, and we've all forced something that was made for something else to fit the niche of something we needed for catfishing. And I think it's a beautiful thing. Platte City, close to Kansas City. Brian Brake. Okay, so let's get back to this real quick. So finding cats hug to the bottom. So let me see if I can demonstrate something here. Let me get a piece of paper. Well, you know what? I'll just draw it up on here. Okay, let's get the black. So here's our fish finder window. And you'll have 30, 20, 10, 5, 0. All right, you got the top of the water, basically. And then on this bottom, you'll have this black portion usually. It's just kind of all filled in. And we have our little bottom, and then we have the water, and we have a little fish. We got a fish here, we got a fish here. But when you move into a particular area, like I was talking about where Roger asked about where he should be fishing this time of year below a dam. If you move in there on one day or 5 days and you see nothing but this bottom being pretty flat, and you go back there the next day and then all of a sudden you see this. Now that's with a regular fish finder. That's with the old style, Space Invaders kind. But since I've been there before, and I know they're not rocks, they're not logs, all of a sudden I'm reminded that, okay, there's catfish, but they're on the bottom. Maybe this doesn't even exist up there. Maybe it just looks like this looks like a whole bunch of nothing, but yet you've got a couple blips. Now these can, most of the time in the summertime, I wouldn't say most of the time, but half the time they're flatheads. Unless it's really not flathead habitat. But a lot of times they're big blues. And let me get some color out here to demonstrate this other thing. Because with a color graph now, you can see, wish I had a blue out. You got your hard line bottom. And then all of a sudden, and we're gonna use this to signify orange or red. Must be deeper there, the plat is here. Okay, orange or red here, and what you'll see is that center, orange, red, or yellow. Okay, if you guys can see that. I might have to get into it a little bit harder. But then you'll have an outline. Because sometimes, and I'll use this, let's see if I got another color. I got red. I should have just redded the inside and used the other, but there'll be an aura of blue a lot of times right along the bottom on this whole thing. And then around this. Let me see if I can get that up there a little bit. Okay, so if you're seeing this, which I don't have the right colors, but usually it's red or yellow on the inside. If it's yellow, it's not as big. If it's yellow and then red in the center, and then that aura of blue, which I'm using as red here, you can see that. There's another cool thing with that. You can actually, with these newer fish finders, you can mark bait fish on the bottom, and you could see that firsthand in a video called, what was that called? I think it was Catfish Brothers. Yeah, I go through that whole thing, and if anybody's really interested in what fish look like marked on the bottom and what bait fish look like marked on the bottom, or what donkeys look like marked on the bottom, you can go in there and watch that video. All right. So Brian Brake, let's be deeper there. Laura the Explorer. Only reason I fished that hole, saw that. Yep. Okay, I said I was going to get back to something. What was it? I got so much in my old brain, I can't keep it all organized sometimes. Fishing a couple miles from the mouth of the what? Brian Brake, I do a lot of fishing down there. And I'm sure if you watch my videos, you know. So, if somebody would kindly remind me what I was talking about, I may remember it, I may not. Let me go back to my thing. Finding cats, and I think we were talking about. I don't remember what we're talking about. We'll just move on to something else. How about that? Okay, so the best winter rig. Now, this is where it gets complex because, as a lot of these guys know, bumping and drifting and dragging, especially controlled dragging, and other things have become very popular, and for good reason. Now, back in my early days, there were very few people that did any sort of drifting. They actually started it on Santee Cooper, if I remember correctly. It may have been started in other places, but Santee Cooper is about the first place that I heard that they were doing drifting. So, yeah, and Roger, remind me to get back to how you deal with fish that are on the bottom and what's going on with them. So somebody remind me that at some point. But Santee Cooper rig was probably one of the first ones that I had heard about and that I actually used. And that was about 1992 or 3. Now, there'd always been guys in Kansas that had drifted, congealed cow and pig blood. And that worked really good for channel cats. And we had done some drifting, especially on strip mine lakes, power plant lakes, and things like that. And we had some limited success with it. Platte River in Kansas, gotcha. Oh, I see. I fish the bank. How far do I need to throw out for a big fish? That depends. Pork chop. In the wintertime, sometimes you only got to throw 10 feet. But I like to stay with the general rule that I want to look at a map or read the current myself or throw rods in the water and, migrate during the year and then return to similar water during the year. Oh, yeah. Yep, they do actually. TVRM, Tennessee Valley River Monsters. Yeah, they do. They're very homeopathic. Flatheads are, and blues are too. So they have a seasonal migration. Now there are events that will hold them up. There are events that will make their populations bigger or smaller depending on what's going on. But let me try to get back to what the drifting. Or no, it was the bank. What I like to do, because I've done it so many different ways, and I like to be scientifically systematic at it. I will want to look at a topographical map. I want to know what the depths are, how close I can get to the main channel so that I can throw on the shallow, but I can also reach within 50, 60 yards of the deep water and that ledge that I was talking about with the heavy water. So, I mean, that has always treated me well in the past. But you know what? Right now, there's a lot of guys that fish big fish offshore that are learning some new things that I don't even really know about. And I don't know if they can describe them yet, but I have talked with some. What's up, Big Mike? I have talked with some that have some pretty interesting stuff going on, like right now. Now, how to put that whole combination together and to do something that's repeatable, it would take a little bit of time, but it could be done. I'm doing very well, Dink over Stink. Very well. So let's explore the best winter rig a little bit more. And like I was saying before, there's a lot of different rigs. But the Santee Cooper rig is one, and that's where you have the weight. Then you have a swivel. Then you have the leader, and then you have a demon dragon or something to keep it up off the bottom. Now that is important in slower water conditions to me, but my opinion is where I fish the faster water, in the summertime, I don't want a demon dragon whatsoever. But once that water gets cold, And once I start fishing slower areas within or close to the faster moving water, I'm not saying it's dead water, but then the demon dragon becomes kind of important. I've done a lot of suspend rods in the wintertime. I've done a lot of things where I'm casting out, and I literally, back before all that, I would put the sinker on the bottom, and sometimes I would put the hook 5 feet up the line. And it wasn't that I was 5 feet up off the bottom, it was just the angle. So if I want to be 2 to 3 foot up off the bottom, I would tie my bait directly in line, and then I would have my heavy sinker so that it couldn't just pull it and drag it. So you got pressure putting on your line like this, your bait is hanging out up here, and I would be able to cast it out or put it directly under the boat. If I put it directly under the boat, it's 5 foot up, but I could let line down. I talked about that at the last catfish conference. So I basically started using down rods. I use them in the summer too, but I would use more of them in the cold water period. Yes. Dead Sea Pirates. Fishing with Big Mike says. Okay, so I don't mind using the Carolina rig almost any time of year. I mean, it doesn't almost matter what the situation is. But I do like to have some rods that are a little bit varied. So I'll have the one where the sinker's on the bottom. I'll have the one where the sinker is a snagless rig, basically sometimes cast out into real snaggy areas with the demon dragon to keep it up. All right, what do we say here? Roger Anderson, Mr. Anderson. Good evening and a wonderful catfishing family, and Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too and your family and all you guys' family. I think I have stumbled onto the greatest place in YouTube that there is. I mean, I don't see that kind of stuff going on in TikTok yet. I don't see it in other platforms. YouTube seems to be the best of the best. But then again, I'm old. So, I mean, all right, we got hooked up catfishing in the house. I'm happy to see Roger Anderson, because he was like my very first video, he was like one of the first commenters. And he commented on everything, and you know, he had some health issues and some other issues, and he kind of disappeared for a while, but he comes back, and I really like it. I watched a couple of his videos, and I really enjoy. He kind of reminds me of my dad. Very intelligent person, you know, looking at things a certain way. And, you know, God bless Mr. Anderson. Yeah. Okay, so let's get to, we got basically finding cats hugged along the bottom. But let's talk about what we're going to do about that when we see that. See, that's the thing. When blue cats are what we call belly to the bottom, they got a bunch of silt built up to them, it can be a really tough bite. Okay, a real tough bite. And sometimes, and I'm seeing it all over YouTube, you go through that especially in the summertime, you go through three days of terrible bite, and then it'll start the upswing. You'll have one day of awesome bite, second day is not so good, and then it starts to go down. So if you were to do a graph, we'll just leave our thing up here. So let's say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. All right. Now I'm going to show you what this. I'm going to show you what this looks like in my experience over 30 years, as well as what I've seen on YouTube in the last year. And this is the closest I'm coming to it at this point, but I will get it figured out, because it's not always true, but it is pretty true. I mean, there's enough people that live fish in the same areas day after day after day after day, and it's pretty interesting. Yep, for 2 weeks. Now that's what's different about the winter, Mike. I'm talking about summer period first, and then we're going to get into the winter. Okay, so you've got this whole basically baseline. So on Monday, if I get to and this is my experience part, if I pick, and it depends on what's going on before I get there. Awesome. Yeah, it's been real slow kind of all over the country. That's good, Roger. You're taking care of yourself. There's William Warner, the best rig to use in the summertime for bottom fishing. I prefer almost every time on, if I have 6 rods out, I'm going to have 4 Carolinas and I'm going to have 2 down rigs. And the 2 down rigs is so I can position that stuff in that heavy current. And if I was fishing in slower current, I would use some Santee Cooper drift rigs where you got the Demon Dragon, you got your thing, and you got your spinners, and you got all, which I call Christmas tree ornaments because I can. Yeah. Okay, so let's get back to this. So if I get to the river on Monday, all right, I know whether the bite's going to be good or not because I've looked at the whole previous week, and this is where I fish. It's very it's very difficult to be able to speak on this topic where it's all over the country, except for you got to throw out the little idiosyncrasies that go along with it because the TVA system is run different. Big Mike will tell you that. Roger will tell you the Ohio's run different. The Illinois run different. The Foxes run different because they're all at the susceptibility of a human raising and lowering the stuff. But this is what I look for. So I'm looking. Let me get the black. It's a lot easier to see. This is a giant secret. Now, it may not be a secret to everybody in here. Some guys are going to like it. But some people are going to go, huh, wonder what that's of. Okay, so let's just say the graph on the river was low, and then it shoots up, and then low, and it's all over the place for 3 days. If it's all over the place, I don't like it. I'll fish it, but I don't love it. I might, if it's all over the place, or especially if it's been up here, way up here, and drops all of a sudden, like that, I know that by the time I get to my fishing date on Monday, the bite's gonna be terrible, right here. I wanna see this. Here, let me erase this. I want to see that. I don't want to see it drop too hard. I don't want to see it rise too hard. I want to see decent, stable water. Now, this is the best right here. If it's been decent, stable water for a week, that's even better when I get there. If it's decent, stable water for half of it, say this was all up and down, blah, 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 and then it stabilizes, or I don't care if it's dropping real slow or rising real slow, but I don't want to see this up here like that. I don't want to see this down here like that because that will shut the bite off. And they could raise and lower the dams or raise and lower whatever, but it's that consistent. And granted, we're talking about the summer period right now, the spring, summer, and fall. And you know what? Winter too. I mean, it pretty much goes with it. Now it's going to be a little different on the Tennessee because they're highly volatile. So they probably don't even see very many periods where it's, flat line. So if you have a flat line, it doesn't matter if it's stable high, stable low, or stable normal. Stable for me has always ended up in a good bite, a good solid, not these tentative bites, not the non-existent bites. And I don't mark fish just resting on the bottom when it's been stable. I usually mark fish like that once it's dropped hard or risen hard on that graph. Yes, Big Mike, it is all crazy. So, I mean, most people, and I am too, we're all at mercy of the river or the lake or the sun or the wind or the snow. We're all at the mercy of that. But I can tell you that there is a way, if you can see it on that prediction graph, and the prediction graph is online, and usually they tell you a couple of days of what it's been past and what they're predicting it to be. If it's constantly like this, like Mike's, well, you just got to go when you go. But me, I can choose to put my trip off. So let's just say I'm planned on going Monday. Current changed 6 times in 24 hours. Yeah, that's rough. Okay, so let's talk about the next part, because all we're talking about now is current. So, but if I know this stuff is happening, blah blah blah, and it's predicted to stay like this, and then it levels out, I can put my trip off. And a lot of times I've canceled trips right here and put my trip off to there. And the reason being is that I'm 5.5, 6 hours away, 2 hotel nights stay. I got to get donkey baits. I got to do all this stuff. And I've just been through it too many times. And I've been able to be pretty darn successful. Matter of fact, we only had 2 live shows that were like not good. One was Flatheads and the other one was all the way up at Keokuk. And I didn't realize they had not opened the dams enough to let a population of blue cats come into that pool, because and let's talk about the winter migration. This is a big one, and I think it'll help a lot of people. Let me read some comments here. Becca, Mr. Anderson. We've got Big Mike, current changes. Yep. Hope all is good. Epic. Have a happy new year. Thank you very much, Jamie. Mo Barrett. Mo Barrett is an interesting character because he is old school, probably older school than me. And he used to fish some of the same type territory, because I've conversed with him online quite a bit. And he says, Tim, how do fish travel through locks and dams? Thinking Burlington, Iowa, caught a blue or 2 upriver from Keokuk. Okay, so that I have not heard of anybody doing, Mo, but I think it's possible, because the Keokuk Dam falls 40 feet, actually probably more like 50, from the top all the way down to the regular river level. But there's a lock through that fish can move through. And I know that blues go into locks a little bit. They don't do it a lot. And back before they outlawed you from fishing in the locks, when you're waiting for it to turn, I used to throw a rod down. And every once in a while I'd catch a little blue. But I have not, and I have fished that pool above Keokuk quite a bit. And I've fished areas that would hold blue cats. And it doesn't seem that there's a blue cat population up there. There's a hydroelectric. They don't pass through that. They can't jump up the dam because it's like a stinking waterfall. It's like Niagara Falls right there. You know what I'm talking about. But they just don't seem to lock through very well. Now, the clam style dams, let me draw this, because not a lot of people know this either. Now, before I start this drawing, there's a lot of different styles of dams, because there was a lot of different theories on how they should do it and stuff like that. But generally, dams on free-flowing rivers were created where the bedrock is highest. So a lot of these dams will have names like Black River Falls Dam, or the Fossil Bed Dam, or whatever people used to call them a long time ago, because, of course, the bedrock was closer to the surface. Now, nobody's going to try to engineer a big dam in a big deep water, so they're usually in the old-style riffles. But what they did was, you've got the bedrock here, and some dams are different, but they've got a bottom piece that is lodged down into the bedrock. Okay, so this is the upstream, downstream. And on here, on this part, this is stationary. And to my knowledge, I think on a lot of the Mississippi River ones, it's about waist high. And the reason for that is because if they, and here's your top clam, and your top clam comes down like this. And then there's usually a bottom clam that comes up like that. All right, so if they were just to leave this top clam go down to the bedrock, the force and the gravity of the water would erode the bedrock. So you got the bold bedrock right here. So when they open this, there's a little hinge right here or thereabout. That stays open like this, and then this clam comes up like this, and water runs through it. Or there's some of them that come from the surface and go down. So a fish that migrates would have to go up and over that thing instead of through it. But there's still a problem with migration here. And you guys know that if blues aren't really going up higher, and we've got current just blowing through here. I mean, it's blowing through there. It's blowing up, and it's, you know, swirling around. And this bottom stuff is a little bit less. It's a little bit less current down here on this bottom stuff. But a blue cat, to get through here, has got to really, really want to get through it. They're not just going to meander and, okay, I found my way from one pool up into another one. And but if they're closed all the time and there's just that little bit that they're, you know, I mean, it won't promote blues going upstream at all. So if the Mississippi, since, and let me draw this too. All right, so you've got, let's start down. You got the Missouri River coming in here. You got the Mississippi, and it winds around, does all kinds of crazy stuff, and it ends up at Keokuk. And then there's a series of dams. And that is, I mean, that drawing right there is not, it's pretty much to scale, because I don't remember how many dams there are, but I'll try to name some of them. Got Alton. You got, of course, Keokuk, and then you've got Meyer. I can't remember the order of all of them because I've been to them so many different directions, but you've got other ones like Canton. I think that was Canton. Then you got Winfield. And I'm sure some of you guys know the exact order, but I don't. I look on a map and I just drive right to it. And sometimes I've went from, you know, pool to pool. But, I mean, they all have their little names, but usually in between, it's about 20 to 30 miles in between. Okay? So you've got this whole stretch. And I call that the upper Mississippi River in Blue Cat territory, because really between the Alton Dam and this all the way up there, it's quite a ways. But it's not it's not something that and here's the thing. If this river flows good, now if it's super high and they got the gates open all the way, they'll still come up. But if it's like super low in the beginning part, you might have some that, I'm not saying this is devoid of blues, but the catchable population gets pretty low of big fish. Because like I'll come in here, and if the water hasn't been right in the month or two before I come here, I don't catch many fish over 50 pounds up here, okay? I mean, I'll catch a few. But if that water gets right, and it's been right long enough, I might expect to go into one spot in the Keokuk area and catch 2 or 3 70s, a 50, 4 or 5 40s, a bunch of 30s and a 20, maybe on one anchor. But when they haven't ran that like that, it seems that population stops or lingers somewhere. But I like this area because it's riverine, and it's a migration stopper. So I can tell by the way this pool acts and how many big fish are at that pool, whether they've been traveling, whether they've been moving up, or just sort of staying in limbo or moving down. And that's pretty interesting. I can also tell that by the population of fish down here below Alton. okay? Because they'll linger at Alton because you got the Missouri. So the Missouri River comes in right here, and they will travel up the Missouri and then hang around in this area. They'll go down by St. Louis, and then they'll also move down in just a matter of weeks. If that water starts going down, they look for deep water. The water starts coming up or being stable, they'll look for shallower. No, they still like deep water, but they're not going to the fight or flight mechanism that they get all like super nervous. So as soon as that water starts dropping, their swim bladder, which is very sensitive, starts to expand, and that tells them we don't have time to eat. We need to make sure that we are in deep enough water that we don't get stranded. Now, flatheads aren't so good at that, and channel cats are actually pretty good at it. But how many blue cats have you guys ever heard of that got stuck in a ditch when the water flooded, and then all of a sudden they're stuck in a ditch? They don't. They really go to deep water. When that water goes up and then it starts to fall, they just really work at it. Now, just remember one thing: there's no absolutes in fishing. Maybe somebody heard of some catfish somewhere because the water went up so fast and then went back down so fast that they got caught in a ditch or got caught in an oxbow lake or got caught whatever. But I'm just telling you what the general trends are. So let's go to, we did the best winter rig. Finding cats, hug to the bottom. Now, what are we going to do about that? Let's talk about that. So, when most of your catfish are belly to the bottom, and you know it doesn't matter, you can still catch catfish, even when they're got silt on their bellies and on their sides. And it's interesting. Like we were on the Tennessee River last winter with Aaron Gibbons and Todd Gentry and another kid, but we were catching blue cats that weren't all that big. I mean, I didn't show them all in the video. There was plenty of them, but they would have silt on their belly and on one side. And if they were on this side of the river, where the ledge was, and like this, it seemed like they were tucking up, and so they got silt here and silt here. The other side of the river, it was kind of opposite. Now, I didn't really mention it in the video, but it was interesting. So, but you can catch fish like that, and I do catch big fish when they are on the bottom like that. But the one thing that I do is I will try to pinpoint them, you know, because I know they're not going to move to me, okay? So I'm going to try to make really specific mental note of where they're at, which I do that almost every time. What's up, David Smith? Awesome. Okay, so if you've got, and you know what? I got the whiteboard. I can demonstrate that right here with the whiteboard. All right. So this stuff gets me excited. I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty excited about it. So I've used my fish finder to move into an area, and I'm marking what we were discussing earlier. All I got is big marks, belly to the bottom. And you'll see that in Catfish Brothers. You'll literally see the marks I'm talking about. But what you can't see in Catfish Brothers is how I do it. Okay, so say I've marked a big fish here, marked one here in my swath, and I marked one here. Let's just say the contour, let's just say we're in deep water, but there's maybe a ledge that comes in here like this, and this one's out in the middle of nowhere. Now, usually I don't mark those out in the middle of nowhere, but this is this is the main channel. And there's a shallower water, so let's just say this is 60, and this is 45, 35, and 25 here. All right, we got the water flow going this way. Now it's almost impossible in the main channel because you've got boat sway like this. It's almost impossible to pinpoint these fish. And let's and this isn't a normal, a lot of times you'll mark them at the base of this drop. So if you're to look at it sideways, it's going like this. So I'm usually marking a fish like that, like right in here. Hopefully you guys can see that. It's kind of got a little bit of a glare. Okay, here I'll just get all tight with this subject here. So most of the time when I'm marking this fish, he's located somewhere along this ledge, usually at the bottom, you know, like right on the bottom, whatever. But I've marked him as a yellow or red interior with a blue outside edge. And maybe there's another one right here. And maybe up here, ooh, let me get the green. Maybe up here I have marked just this blue haze, real tight to the bottom. And usually, in my experience, those are deep water bait fish. They're hug tight to the bottom. They're not necessarily a big shad pile. They're just fish that maybe about this tall, maybe about whatever, and they're carpeting an area. So these fish are literally hanging out by these fish. But how do I throw in their faces in this big wide open thing? It's like fishing a lake. So what I do is if I'm going to target this fish right here, I will get my boat up into here with a big long anchor, of course. So I'm going to throw, since the current's going this way, I'm going to throw this rod out here and I'm going to let it dribble until it slaps up against here, right here. So I'm talking away from the camera and I know that's kind of terrible, but I'm gonna put my boat just off of the side so that I can throw things sideways, and once they dribble, they catch. And my line just lays all across this. So if you were to look at that, there's actually line just laying across this, okay? Because the current's pushing it. I don't want it tight. I want it loose enough. So I'll throw down, let it hit the bottom, and then I'll strip off 15, 20 feet of line so that I can pull this every so often and get that right in front of their face or right behind them or maybe even up here. But as long as I can get it, when those fish are on the bottom like that, and believe it or not, this happens a lot more than just when the fish are on the bottom. I use it in the summer a lot, even when they're active, because I want to pick these fish off where they're going along these little ledges right here. I mean, they're just moving. Even if they're moving, they're gonna move along this ledge. Maybe they go up, but a lot of times my big blues don't go up this ledge up into here. They stick down in this zone, this 40 to 60 foot of water right here. I catch very few fish up that are giants up on this ledge. I'll catch 20s, 30s, and 40s up on this ledge. Now up here on the flat, it's got to be pretty special for me to, and I always throw baits up there because like right here, I'm on this flat already. So I might even throw baits in the 25. I might throw baits in the 35. I might throw baits in the 45. But my main target are these two rods right here. I've got a down rod with donkey on it because I got heavy water to deal with. I got a donkey weight. I got a big bait. So I'm going to put that right off here and straight down, okay, so that it can be on this ledge. Or I'm going to lob it out a little bit if I'm too far inside the ledge. But other than that, I'm targeting this fish and I'm hoping I'm going to get a bite here or here. Now, if you guys watched one of our last lives where we went above the dam, that is exactly the scenario that we did this with, except for there was, both fish were back here. They were like belly to the bottom, all like this. One might have been out a little bit farther. But I marked 3 fish on that last live. When we gave up below the dam, the bite was terrible. We locked through, we went up and we caught like a 43, and then we caught like I don't even remember, wasn't it an 85? I don't know. But right here, and I think I've got them opposite. I think this fish was in superior position, like here. There was another one, but he was kind of out. And I marked them 1 and 2. And so I took this rod right here and I threw it out right over here, and it swung over. I took that second rod. Yep, actually that's wrong. I took Aaron's rod and I threw it first. I took this second rod, threw it out, and it swung back over like that. And we ended up catching those fish within 20 minutes of each other. And that's not a happenstance or a lucky thing. It happens time and time again when I'm presented with that sort of location and that sort of bite. All right, any questions? Talked about current, stability, fluctuation. Does that flow with barometric pressure? Stability over fluctuation or vice versa of high or low pressure. Let me get to that in a second, Mike. I just want to check because I've been kind of ignoring chat. Yep, listen for a while. Okay, so I'm kind of caught up now. Let's talk about one thing, Mike. It's a very intelligent question. The problem with doing multiple phases of multiple ideas about catfish behavior is that it becomes almost like a Pythagorean theorem plus some sort of frickin' quantum physics. I mean, it really does. And to superimpose all of these factors on top of each other to do it scientifically requires pretty much, I would have to say, and let me read that again just to make sure I'm not over complicating this. Tim, you talked about current, stability, fluctuation. Yes. Does that flow with barometric pressure, stability over fluctuation? Yes. I could simplify that. I mean, you probably asked the question a lot simpler than what I was thinking. Yes, stable barometer works the best, except for a falling barometer seems to spur them on because in their simple cortex brain, that fires up we may not get a chance at food again because there's a big storm coming. They could be literally inundated, and bait is as hard for them as it is for us to find in that really new floodwater with all the crap coming down and all that stuff. Yep, it is always a factor. It's always a deadly tactic, Roger. And he calls it a swing rod. I might have to adopt that. Do you look at the river flow charts at different locations and dams to determine where to start fishing? Yeah, I do, David. Matter of fact, when I used to guide, I would be paying attention to that, and what they were telling me was that it was stable and up. I'd get there and it's low because somehow they weren't right. I mean, it does occasionally happen to where the internet report on the graph isn't what the river is really doing, and just because I was able to know what the CFMs and the flow was and the water level by certain landmarks, and I'm like, this isn't even, this is crazy. So I'd have my customers meet me at one boat ramp, and we'd end up going 2 boat ramps up or 1 down, and they were always worried. My customers were. They're like, what? I said, this current isn't going to cut it. I said, we're going to have a miserable day. Yeah, we're still going to catch some fish, but I'd really rather go to a pool, within an hour. Because they're only 28 to 30 miles long, within it, I could take the boat out or not even put it in, go up to the next pool and have a really good time. But they're like, yeah, but do you fish that very much? I said, I don't need to fish very much. I said, I know where to catch catfish because of the nature of the catfish. And, I was luckily 100% never wrong. Ringo fishing. Ryan, what's going on? Okay. That's hard for us old men. We usually remember the things that we saw first, not last. Let's see. Too many variables given too. Gosh, that disappears so quick. Given too much weight, you'll never go fishing because it's never perfect. That's true, but there are the big ones, Roger. As long as we don't get too much into the Rubik's cube and the rabbit hole. As long as we don't do that. And sometimes you got to say, you know what? I've only got Monday to fish. Yeah, it looks terrible, but I might be able to eke out some fish. There's no doubt. But if you choose to spend your vacation days, let's just say I had a vacation day that I could either, take on Monday, or I can move to another date where the bite's going to be a little bit better. that's what I do. Now, sometimes it turns out worse. I mean, shoot, we had one season where it was flooded for 2 months, and that was in like July and August. And we didn't really get on the water until, I mean, on the water with good, solid hopes of catching fish until August 24th. Once we did, it was like it was it was balls out. Now, we had went earlier when it was higher water, but the bite wasn't on. It wasn't really great. It wasn't till the water kind of stabilized down, and we weren't doing all that ebbing and flowing in that water level that the bite became good. Now, not I cannot fish everywhere at the same time. If I could, I would really know what's going on. But all I've got to deal with is what I do and what I can hear from other people. All right, so sometimes I'll have an idea that I should have went shallow, or I should have went to a mouth of a tributary, or I should have fished a lot deeper. But most of the time, there's somebody fishing in that kind of area. And when you get to the boat ramp, and they didn't do diddly, you're like, okay, there you go. So Whiskers and Stripes says Tim has already pinned down the variables that get the most weight, current, depth, cover. Yes, yes, and that's the simple equation, and it becomes a little bit rougher once you start matching it for during pre-spawn and then during winter, rather than just your same summer situation with normal water. Well, you guys certainly have been pretty awesome about this. Lots of great questions, lots of good interest. I really like it. Think of it as an experiment. You learn the most by testing one variable at a time. Absolutely, Wild Turkey. And that's something that I've been able to do my whole life because I kind of ran it that way. But yeah, there is a ton of different variables, but you can see the forest for the trees. I mean, there's a lot of trees, but you just got to take a step back and say, okay, what did I do? What did I try? And did I stay pretty systematic about it? But these days you don't even have to do that because, a long time ago when I was doing this, there wasn't an equation. There wasn't there was guys catching big fish. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not like before I started this or before I thought about it, nobody was catching big fish. They were, but nobody was teaching anybody else how to do it. That's for sure. You had to be either in the boat with either commercial fishing guy or, one of them early tournament guys that were really good, or just them old, real rough cat fishermen, and there wasn't any way to learn that. So I just kind of had to go on my own. And when you do that, there's a lot of failure involved. There really is. But now I think a lot of people can skip a lot of that failure part because at least they're in the ballpark, and that's really kind of a cool thing. All right, so let's talk about. We talked about moon phase. We talked about barometer a little bit. All right, so the winter time especially, you can set up on your normal haunts and you go, what is wrong here? I haven't had a bite in days. Let's see, written trip log or on all the conditions. I used to, Turkey. I don't anymore because I pretty much have it memorized. It's kind of like, yeah, I needed that captain's log back in the day. And that's why I started doing captain's log. It really wasn't a Star Trek thing. It was that. And I took lots of notes. I'd even talk about, what the sun was doing and all that. And I would kind of write it in captain's log form. You know, that kind of reminds me, because remember when I was telling you I was in college and I talked all my professors into let me do stuff? I actually wrote captain's logs for a grade at one point because I was already doing it. I'm like, yeah, let me write this. But so I started writing them differently. I put a little bit more emotion, a little bit more feeling along with the science and along with what happened, and it made it more like a story. Oh, Uncle Jeep, boom, boom, boom. Thank you, sir. Yeah, it's going to be great. I think it's going to be great. I'm hoping it's going to be great. That's for sure. So yeah, and I had quite a few friends that wrote really extensive logbooks, but most of it is basically trying to remember it. And I think I mentioned this a couple times. We would always come home, and even guys that didn't go on the trip would, some of them would drive 20, 30 miles just to come and hear about our trip and see the pictures. Once we, I started using a digital camera pretty early because I got tired of doing the regular 35 millimeter, and the people that were taking the pictures cut your head off, or they cut the fish's head off, or whatever. So I bought an Olympus digital camera, geez, when they first came out. And so that way you could look and see what they were. So we would show and share pictures and tell the story of how everything went. Even if it wasn't a great trip, there was people, I mean, I'd have sometimes 15 people on my porch out here. And so that makes a guy really remember stories really well, really well. And we don't do it as much anymore since I've been doing the YouTube thing. So I may have to start doing my captain's log thing by writing stuff down again. I don't know. Okay, so the Dead Sea thing. Let's. I'm gonna try to get this right. Let me try to move that. Doesn't matter if you're a channel cat fisherman, or you're a blue cat fisherman, or you're a flathead guy. All the above, or whatever you've got. It seems like in the winter, you've got a bite window, and I know you guys have been hearing me talk about a bite window for quite a while. So that's the first thing you got. Whereas a bite that's in the summertime seems to be a bigger time period. Usually your best bite, and it doesn't matter what body of water you're on, where you're at, what the moon phase is, it doesn't really matter. Usually there's a morning bite between maybe an hour before sun up to about maybe 8:30, 9, 10 o'clock. And then maybe, and that's usually a major, and then your bite window extends maybe from 11 to 2, but it's a real minor one. And then all of a sudden it will start up again right before, usually an hour before dark till at least an hour afterwards. Might be the heavy period, and then it might go into 10:30, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, midnight, kind of shut down, and then go back to, get back on about 3 o'clock in the morning for an hour or so, whatever. But that doesn't seem to be the case in the winter. I've been fishing the winter, which I don't fish much in the winter now. I'm old, I get cold, it's not really worth it to me, blah, blah, blah. And I live so darn far. All right, so enough excuses by me, but let me. There's kind of a twofold situation on this Dead Sea thing. Let's just say you fish. Let's talk about a small river. You might have a tributary that comes in, whatever. You got a small river. Now, I'm not saying like the Fox. The Fox, they're landlocked. They're not going much anywhere. I mean, you'll see Jonathan, you'll see catfish and crappie go and just whack the snot out of fish. They're in a little boat. They don't have to go far and just beat them up. But when you're in a natural size river like mine, just a small river, most of those catfish, by the time the pre-spawn's over, they skedaddle downriver for better habitat. And that fools a lot of people. A lot of people are like, man, I catch these things here in the summer all the time, but I can't buy a bite. And I've fished and I've fished and I've fished. Now, I'm not saying every one of them does. Let's just say this river is kind of like mine. It's, you could, a long cast, you could cast across it. It's going to be, your riffles are going to be a foot, foot and a half, but your deeper stretch is going to be 4 or 5 feet. Maybe a hole is maybe 6, 7 feet. There's plenty of catfish up there in in the spring, early into the summer, but all of a sudden the numbers start dropping. And that's because they've come from a mother river, which is way downstream, way down here, where the water's bigger, it's deeper. They come from maybe the Illinois, or maybe they come from the Tennessee, or maybe they come from the Kentucky River, or maybe they come from whatever. But in the pre-spawn, they move up these rivers, and they'll end up in your fishing local habitat. And you're throwing out whatever, hot dogs or shrimp or chubs or bluegill heads or shad or whatnot, and you pretty much are pretty successful at it. But as soon as that pre-spawn is over, as soon as the spawn is over, the bigger bulk of the population, like this may be, and let's just make it easy. You might have a 5 fish per, let's say 25 fish per mile. Okay, during the pre-spawn, or let's just say you got 25 fish per mile average before the pre-spawn even starts. Well, once the pre-spawn starts, like in the middle part, it's going to be April or thereabout when they start coming out of the main river, and then all of a sudden your 25 jumps up to 250 per mile. Well, that's pretty successful right there, because your population went from bare bones way up. And then all of a sudden, you can catch them in your river anywhere. But as soon as that post-spawn, as soon as the spawn's done, you go back to 25. And then the winter period, a lot of them for a long stretch, it doesn't have suitable wintering habitat. A lot of them are going to move down into maybe 1 to 4 holes in the next 50 miles. I see that on even bigger rivers like the Rock River and stuff like that. Flatheads will come for miles to go to one wintering hole. The channel cats will somewhat be more accessible, but that's how that works. Blue cats are kind of the same way. So, if you go from 25 per mile to 250 per mile back to 25, and then those 25, they're not even spread out. They're all together because the wintering period, they're acceptable of each other. They don't have to fight. All their gumption's taken away, so you'll find them in like 2 or 3 holes within 20, 25 miles of water. So that is why you're thinking you're the surface of the moon, because you are on the surface of the moon, or you might as well be, because they're not where you're at. And it takes a special situation for them to get them moving again. I don't like people that, oh boy. Yes, Sunfish Assassin, exactly. There's some of these rivers that have channel cats in the pre-spawn or in the spring, and they have almost none after that for almost the whole part of the year. They literally get up and out of their regular habitat, go up these flooded rivers, and do their spawn stuff. Nolan, good deal. You're a perfect place to learn about catfish. Nice. Okay. So, talking about the Hudson, yeah. And lots of rivers like it. Lots of rivers like it. I like people that make me super mad, and he does not care about me, and I'm annoying. What are we talking about, Nolan? Well, if I've ignored him, I don't ever ignore anybody on purpose. So if it's me, I apologize, and all you got to do is just say it again. I don't know what the issue is, but I never ignore people, because I think all opinions and all comments are valid. If we're staying with catfishing, it's all valid because we've all been there, Part of the reason was described because he's got a terrible memory now. But really, hey, yes, I may seem like I'm up here lecturing a little bit, but if I've only got one person, and that's me, I got to ask questions and kind of keep fired up about it, because I don't want to talk about bacon and stuff. No, it's not. I'm chilling. Okay. Well, if there's an issue, I've said some wrong things to people before, and they have been kind of mad at me, which I didn't even realize I even said, or they took it that way. And so I'm like, well, okay. Oh, yeah. Well, I just want to make sure it wasn't me. And if there's any issues, I like to address them. Oh, Nolan's 9. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we all learn to communicate, and we all learn to learn and pay attention, and we all have to learn to speak up for ourselves. So my hat's off to little Nolan. Okay. Steve Bosley. All right, so now we kind of took care of the channel cats. So let's take care of the flatheads. And this is kind of a big one. Because normally flatheads do not go up into small rivers like this. I mean, sometimes they do. If it's close enough to a main river and there's a real tiny river, yes, they'll go into it. Like rivers of note on the Mississippi are the Skunk and the Wapsie and stuff. They're tiny little rivers. Now the Cedar's bigger, and so is that one that spills in down at Keokuk. I'll remember the name of it earlier, but there's some really tiny creeks that get giant flatheads, but you can't have a tiny creek that is a long way away unless you have special circumstances. Flatheads and channel cats like to migrate upstream during high water. Blues don't seem to. So let's remember that. So that's one of the reasons why you don't have big blue cats going into tiny rivers. I mean, you'll have tiny rivers that empty into blue cat territory, but they're not going to go way up it even when it's flooded. Or if they do, they'll skedaddle back out because, yeah, people have some success, especially in the winter, but usually in the summertime, they really don't have these little tiny tributaries get full of big fish, or maybe one will go into it, like the dude that a long time ago caught one in a small river on some spam. Oh, okay, it happens because there's no absolutes in fishing, but just remember this, the tendency for flatheads to stay near the main river is pretty big, unless we have a long period during the right time, right before pre-spawn, and in the middle of the country, flatheads pre-spawn is, the height of the pre-spawn is right about July 4th. So it begins late May. It can be a little earlier, especially if we get high water quick. Late May, mid-May to late May, and ends usually right about July 4th or maybe a week after. But if we get high water, for a month of sustained high water before that, they'll actually travel farther away from the main river and into what we like to call tertiary rivers. And let me explain that real quick. So here's your main stem of a big river. And it may have an island and an oxbow. This comes around like this. This comes around like that. That's all good and well. Now this, let me erase that. Here's your main channel. And it doesn't matter if it's the Mississippi or it's the Tennessee or whatever. But then you'll have these little islands where it kind of shallows up and the water gets a little bit slower around here. Let's go like that. These are excellent flathead habitat areas. The problem is, unless we get extended periods of high water, they actually prefer to stay on this, which would be this is a secondary channel. So you got your main channel, so that's number 1. This is number 2. Now, if you got another channel that comes off of that, that's number 3. So you got your main channel, which is number 1. Your number 2 is your secondary channel. And then your number 3 is your tertiary channel. And then you can go even farther. You can go into the quads and the whatevers. But these are more like backwater sloughs, and they're slow. They're slow. It's more like crappie and gar water, usually by the time you get off of this secondary channel, because this is your main flow right through here, and then you have an opening, and it's usually piping through here and back into the river. So this is usually shallow. This is actually the deeper portion. This right here off of this is more like a little, just like a little backwater area. And while people have caught big fish back in there, under normal water circumstances, it takes high water for that to do any good. And you can talk to the bank liners, the trot liners, and all that stuff. So what are quads? Okay, so Nolan, the quads would be the ones, like this is the 3, And I don't even talk about quads, so I don't even know if they're called quads. All I know is that you'll have another channel branching off of this channel. So it's just 4 stages away from the river. So you got your first one is the main, your second, it's your second channel off of the main river. And then if you have a third channel off of the main river, it gets even slower. And then your fourth gets even slower than that. So that's what we talk about, like backwaters. That's like your home of your alligator gar is your secondary channel and your tertiary channel on fast flowing rivers like the Mississippi. Except for I do know one thing, you can find them along the main channel like gar and stuff like that, but I don't really deal with gar much. I don't deal with gar much at all because I don't normally fish a tertiary channel. If I go into tertiary channels, there's all kinds of gar. Go into, and there's bullheads, and there's this and that and the other. And just because the bait fish is there doesn't mean the flatheads are there. Now, I'm wrong when the water's been high enough that this secondary channel and this tertiary channel has had enough time to what I call bake. It's had high water, it's got decent current, and all of a sudden fish, there's a lot of current in here, so they start going into these, and then they end up in these. And so that happened to Sean and I last year. We didn't really, my normal habitat to catch giant fish is off of the main, just off the main channel in one of the ledges. So you got a tree, you got a sunken barge, you got, you know, a wing dike, you got whatever. But the water had been high enough and I wasn't there to experience it because I didn't go early in the season. I waited until mid-June to go. I mean, it's pretty obvious by our lives and stuff. So what I should have been targeting was, and we ended up catching fish on several trips, but most of them were tucked inside this secondary channel. And these tertiary channels, which had lots of wood sticking up and 3 to 4 foot of water, what I didn't realize, and this is the mistake that I made, was that their pre-spawn had jumped up a couple of weeks, and everybody knows that when you get hot, well, I mean, and I hadn't seen it in so long, I kind of forgot about it. I needed to visit this wood in these normally, okay, big gar low mouth of a secondary channel when the water drops enough to cause, yep. So I should have visited what is normally slow gar and bullhead water because there was just enough current. I wasn't attuned. I wasn't on the water every day, so I wasn't attuned to what these flatheads were doing. So I was fishing the same old thing that I always do and expecting the same results. But so I was reminded of that this last year with flatheads. Nice. Well, Nolan, just keep listening to these guys that are in chat. A lot of them got channels, and you will learn a lot. Because I'll tell you what, I'd have been eating this up when I was a kid. How to catch a big alligator gar? Yeah, pretty much. Big alligator gar, love the mouth, Creel nose. And you know, there's a lot of alligator gar in those big honking oxbows and backwaters that Creel fishes. He contacts them because there is such a huge population. Now, I'm not even talking about alligator gar because we don't really have them, but we have big long nose and we have big short nose. Yeah, good. Okay, so now let's talk about tributary rivers because there's a way, and I'm kind of going out on a limb here, but there's a way on the Mississippi to tell if there's giant flatheads, and I shouldn't even say this out loud. All right, Mr. Anderson, good to see you. Have a good night. There is a way to tell whether a pool itself has a good population of big fish just by looking at a map. Believe that or not. All right. Okay, I should say a good population of catchable fish. So if you're looking at a map of, and the Tennessee is going to be a little bit different, but let's just take a look at the Mississippi because it's a classic river. And there's other rivers that are like a small Mississippi. You know, let's even talk about the Ohio. Those pools that don't have a major good flathead habitat tributary that dumps into them, they're not usually as good for big flatheads. Usually if you have a pool such as the Wisconsin River coming into the Mississippi, or you have the Rock River pouring into the Mississippi, or you have the Des Moines pouring in, or you have the Missouri pouring in. And that's one thing you guys would notice if you had been watching, like if you were a fly on my shoulder. Because I don't usually fish, I don't usually operate, I don't usually travel to pools that don't have at least one major tributary coming in. Because big fish will travel up those tributaries and they'll spawn, and they will constantly, not those landlocked pools, but those ones that have those bigger tributaries, they'll constantly be replenishing the big river, because they'll go up there, they'll do their spawning, they'll grow up to a certain size, and a lot of them will spill down into the main river. And it's pretty much true everywhere I have concentrated. I will find big flatheads, and down in the blue cat territory, I'll find big blues. Wherever there's a major tributary, and it can't be those little tiny ones. I mean, it can. The tiny ones, when the water's up real good, real high, those fish will go up there and they'll be successful at spawning. But that's only, you know, every 8-10 years. But those ones that are big, robust, with a lot of habitat, they'll consistently go into those rivers. And even if there's a dam, it'll still spill little ones down that when those fish are moving downriver, or even when there's high water. A lot of those fish will go up over lowhead dams. They'll go through all that stuff, and they will end up in that main Mississippi River. Now, the same thing can be true of certain pools on the Tennessee, even though I'm not an expert on the pools on the Tennessee. But I have to imagine that there are certain smaller rivers that have been responsible for some of the bigger flatheads caught in that whole river system, even though there's plenty of big ones in there. But I would imagine there's certain pools on the Tennessee that are better for big flatheads than others. And I would about bet you that there's major tributaries, flathead style rivers, that are coming in, flowing into them. So that is one way to look at a map and say, you know what, I'm gonna go visit someplace. Oh, let's see what we got. Mo Barrett, Tim, like the Rock Island area. Oh, I fished the Rock Island area, sir. Yes, like the Rock. And you know what? I've caught more fish over 70 pounds than I've flatheads than I've ever heard about anybody else catching fish. I'm not saying people haven't caught more fish, but I have caught an absolute ton of fish over 70 pounds. For a flathead, that's big. And yes, it is like the Rock Island area. It is like, you know, the Skunk and the Wapsie and all those what I would call flathead hatchery rivers. When they're dumping into a main river, that means it's constantly replenishing that stock. And, you know, the big ones, they may get up to 50 pounds in these smaller rivers and pretty much eventually be down in the big mother river. And it happens the other way around. Little tiny ones, they move down and, you know, 10, 20 pounders. But, I mean, it is one of those things where you'll notice that the big fish, most of the truly giant fish, get caught on the big river pool with less pressure. Because you go into those smaller rivers, you got a whole lot of pressure, like the Rock, like the Wapsie, like the Skunk, like all this stuff. You got bank poles and diddy poles and frickin', you know, stuff everywhere. You know, even like the Wabash down there. Hey, Tim. Mark Knott, what's going on? I know YouTube is not notifying very well on my stuff, and you can see that by my numbers. I mean, it's been pretty bad. I get text messages from people that say, hey, I didn't get a notification. Or, hey, I got, you know, I got unsubscribed from you, and I didn't unsubscribe from you. So they're not, I don't know. Maybe it's because I put some shorts, you know, out with some tannerite, which the left-wingers don't like that. But, yeah. Kind of with YouTube, you got to be constantly throwing stuff into the box before they'll do that. What happened to the new gear? Oh, geez, you're right. All right. Well, I did show some of that, but let's. I did talk about that. Let me talk about a little bit more new gear here. Uh-oh. Yep. So at the Cat Con, this last time in Kansas City, Fins and Fines said, "Hey, what rod would you get?" And and we kind of walked around and all this stuff. I thought I was giving him advice for a rod, and he went and bought it, and he like insisted on giving it to me. So I'm like, awesome, and I'm kind of glad I kind of picked this one because this is kind of my double duty rig. It's let me step this thing back so I can show it to you. So this is a Big Cat Fever, and it is 7'6", 20 to 60 pound line, and it says it's rated for 2 to 16 ounces, and it is a heavy. Now it isn't. This is not as heavy as what my surge rods are, but I can see that this thing is going to go double duty between big flatheads. It's still a big river rod. I mean, I wouldn't use it in like a small river normally, but it is going to be on the boat, and it's going to be one of the highlight things. And I've got one of my new rod lightsaber donkey lights set up on it, and I got it waterproofed. I think you guys went through that with me before, unless there's somebody new in here. And then I ended up asking, you know, of course, you got to fill out your Christmas list for your in-laws and your parents and all that stuff. So I put these Burning Shark reels, these 30, they are the SHA 30, gear ratio 4:1 and they have, I believe, about 30 pounds of drag. And so I got 2 of these. And I also got another surge rod because, of course, you guys know I had one get ripped out of the boat. There's been other things happen. Well, yeah, and I ended up having to buy Peace City one, a reel. But let's just say, then I found this surge rod, which is it's not as old as my other ones. I actually found it at the bait shop down there in Alton, and says lure weight 3 to 21 ounces, 20 to 50 pound line. So it's not like the this isn't as heavy as like the one I caught the super monster on. And I'll show you that one here in a minute. So this is the old Silver Elite series right here. I mean, this thing is a big, thick, heavy rod. But I have landed a lot of monsters on it. This one is, and I never even paid attention to that. See, this is so old that it's rated for 3 to 10 ounce lure weight. I've thrown the biggest weights and baits with this rod than I've ever thrown in my life. I mean, this thing is, this is the grouper rod style, and this is like the old big Shakespeare Arsenal, stuff like that. But I mean, this thing has literally caught hundreds of fish over 50 pounds and quite a few fish over 100. So I haven't washed it, but of course I got the lights on this too. So hopefully this upcoming season, I'm gonna have lights on all the rods, because I got kind of tired of them hitting the ones without the lights, because the lights look good in the camera. One more thing I got is I got a pack of Rippin' Lips hooks, and these are the same style as the catfish. I always forget about that. The Team Catfish hooks that I use. I always forget because they were first the Daiichi Circle Chunk lights, but this is a modified circle hook. I can set the hook on, and they're thinner wire, and they're really tough. I mean, really tough. I try to take pliers and bend them. You can't even do that. And they don't break either, which I like. I mean, I'm sure I could do it if I threw them in a vise or whatever and hit them with a hammer. Maybe something would happen. But I'm pretty confident that this is going to let me hook up with more flatheads and probably more blues. I wouldn't necessarily use them for channel cats because they are 7/0. But driving, so not chatting. What's up, Brian B? So this particular hook, and there's lots of good hooks out there. I'm not trying to say anything, but for me, I'm going to try this. And so let's just say that Catfish Heroes was pretty impressed with these things. He's like, hey, that wouldn't be. So he kind of put them on his Christmas list. So I threw about half of this thing into like a container and brought it over to him for Christmas. I brought him a rod too, rod, reel, the whole set, like a whole nother setup, like what I just showed you. And yeah, lost that rod, was a heartbreak. Yeah, and it was less about the rod and more about the fish, Mo, because I mean it's hard to tell, but that fish could have been the biggest fish I've ever landed. I don't know. You never know. Some hit different than others, but it had all the telltale marks of a fish that was over 5 foot long, no doubt. But the world will never know. I wish I'd have been able to snag that thing. But yeah, and Assassin, I was just talking about this earlier. I think you were here, but I decided to encase those donkey lights in the plastic and then take like let me see here. Let's see what we got in our little box. So here's the, just like at Menards or whatnot, just the shrink wrap stuff, and you just put it around. And so I was able to seal it all up because, yeah, it was getting a little bit worn. Also at Catfish, I was also able to find a big pack of these, which I'm a big fan of these because I fish so many different speeds of current and depths that I can put one of these on there and snap and unsnap all my weights on them. Now, sometimes they break. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But it's a lot easier than cutting your line, sliding on another sinker, and then trying to, go to because really, if I'm in shallower, slower water, I don't want 12 ounces of weight. I got to be in that super deep, fast stuff. So, I mean, I'll switch anywhere from 4, like when I'm donkey fishing big blues down at Alton and all that stuff by St. Louis. I'm throwing on, giant weights in one spot and then switch them all the way back down to 5s in another. Mike T, just put a comment on it real quick. What you got? Mike Turner. I put my Daiwa AccuDepth 27 LC on. No, that's not it. Did Mike have a comment or a question? Mike Turner's exact rod, the green one. Yeah, that's an awesome one. Well, anyways, so we got sinker sliders for the year. We've got some new thinner wire, which takes less pressure on a flathead. So when they back up, and you just got to set the hook, that's gonna be better. I've got some other things that we'll talk about next time. So yeah, pretty cool. So I think we've covered all of the Dead Sea thing. We didn't get back to what the Dead Sea thing was doing. New video, so I can give you a mod. Oh, okay. Okay, so let's get back to the Dead Sea thing. And I don't even think I got to go to the drawing board. So the warmer the water, the more habitat that the fish need. Or, well, they do. Because the warmer the water, and it doesn't matter if they're feeding really heavily right now. Some blues are, especially in the south. Some blues are, even, like St. Louis. But for most of the period of time, they need about 20, as soon as that water gets to be about 40 degrees, they only need 20% of the calories that they need for the rest of the year. The higher the water, the more calories they need. The more space they need. They start spreading out. So you're more liable to go into an area that looks good for the activity period and be successful. Problem is, once the wintering phase happens, and it's either the limbo stage, on the East Coast and down, or even like down to Texas, it's kind of a limbo stage where they're moving from deep water and holding and then going up and feeding aggressively for an hour or two and then coming back down. They still only need 20% of the of the the food intake. So the problem becomes once they get once they migrate far enough to these more classic holding areas, it takes away a lot of your fish that you would contact normally. So you're fishing the same area is fine because maybe you've done good in the winter there. But a lot of times it will be dead sea. I mean, dead sea. And you go, where are they at? And one of the reasons I know this is because I used to run underwater cameras in search of this knowledge. And we wouldn't find a catfish or two in 3-4 miles, even in suspect areas. But then you get to one that's just a little bit better, and there's where all the catfish were. I mean, you'd find 5,000 channel cats and 500 flatheads in an area that's not bigger than a football field. But then you go south of that or north of that in the current, and you don't find anything for miles. So, I mean, that'll kind of explain the story. So in the wintertime, you just got to keep moving. And the problem is, even if you get on those fish, the 500 flatheads, they're not going to bite anyway. And the 1,000 channel cats or even 5,000 channel cats, they aren't going to bite on a normal basis for yet maybe an hour or two a day. So, I mean, you just got to keep plugging and hope that they're going to move shallow, or hope that, you know, you're going to find them on that ledge, or, you know, moving from area to area. It just, I mean, some people like winter fishing and some people find it to be kind of a hoax, you know, that story of, and the problem is it's not a hoax. It's the fact that so few people get on a great winter bite that for most of us it is a hoax. I've been on a great winter bite before. I've been on it in the James. I've been on it in the Chickahominy. I've been on it in shallow water on Santee Cooper. I've been at it on a lot of these things. What's up, Real Beast? You know, on a lot of places, but I've also been places that should have held big catfish, and you go all day without a bite. All right, any other questions? We've been at this for quite a while. I'll give it a few minutes if you guys got any more questions or any comments or anything like that. Yes, sir, Mo Barrett, and I'll tell you how that happened. Believe it or not, there's quite a few bull sharks in the lower Mississippi River. It just happened to be that one went all the way up to there. I've actually heard stories of guys catfishing down there below Alton and hooking into them, and some of them have seen them before they broke their line or did whatever. Thanks, Pork Chop. I've heard of people actually landing some smaller, not tiny, but like 3 and 4 foot bull sharks down there. The thing, it used to be more common for people 25 years ago, Mo, and you probably know this, there wasn't a lot of bigger tests available, so a lot of guys used wire leaders. I mean, what Quint off Jaws would say, piano wire. You know, I mean, snip that piano wire like that. You know, I mean, that's what it was. So you don't have, you know, a lot of people are just getting broke off when they get bit by a bull shark. Now I don't say that there's a lot of them there, but I think there's a possibility of them being there at certain times, especially in the St. Louis area, especially, you know, down farther, Memphis, and definitely down by Creole. Yep. 6 foot and under. Yep, that's right. That's right. They're, you know, we know that bull sharks, you know, they kind of are reared in fresh water. Yes, wire leaders for us old guys. That's right. And so since we don't have any wire leaders anymore, I mean, a shark tooth takes, it doesn't matter if it's a 100-pound test. Shark tooth just snaps that stuff. So I don't expect a bunch of people to actually land them anymore. Awesome, David Smith. You are awesome. Thank you, and Happy New Year's to you too. That is tomorrow, isn't it? I think we're supposed to go to some sort of New Year's Eve party tomorrow night. I don't know exactly where, but somewhere. Always dig the knowledge and Sharing the stories. Next time you see Sean, tell him I said, hey, take care. I will. Brian B. Can Creel go to bed? I'm sick. That's funny. Well, one of these days, and I'm really thinking about doing a weekly show. I'm kind of, my signal isn't that great because I want to do StreamYard, and StreamYard doesn't like my signal at all. So hopefully I can get guests up here, and it'll be kind of sometimes fun and funny and whatever. I mean, yeah, I'm pretty serious, but I can laugh too. Just when I'm by myself, I don't generally do it. That's another thing. I'd like to see a. I'd like to see like a chat list that didn't like fade away. I wish it still stayed up and just scrolled. That'd be so much easier. I suppose I should probably get one of those iPad things or whatever everybody uses. Not iPad or whatever they are. Sea fishing with Big Dan. All right, everybody, if that's it, I don't want to take up everybody's time. I'm sure, oh boy, here comes another thing. StreamYard does that. Yep, yep. All right, everybody, I am going to sign out and probably go ahead and clean up my mess, I guess. So, Brian B. Brian B's got something goofy to say, I'm sure. Well, Brian B, congratulations on the monster. I got to see that. I think, well, and there was somebody else that caught another monster not too long ago. I think it was Tim King. I was in he was on TikTok chat. I dropped in there in the morning, and by that afternoon, somebody's sending me pictures. I think it was Susquehanna Stan, sending me pictures of Tim King's giant fish, which 5'5", that's a long, long fish. That is a really long fish. We're getting closer to 6 foot all the time. Yep, you're welcome, Dink. You're welcome. All right, everybody. I think I'm going to say goodnight. Thanks for being in here. I loved every second of it. You guys are awesome, like completely awesome. Still pinching myself. Uncle Jeep, thank you for being in here. Because you know what? Without you guys, I'd be just talking to myself. Because my kids have heard this a million times. They just roll their eyes. They're like, huh? What? That's all right. They'll start asking questions again once they start to go try to do it on their own. They think you just pull up and catch a big fish right now. Welcome, Whiskers and Stripes. Mo Barrett, always good to see ya. Avid, awesome. I didn't even know you were in here. You think flatheads like more shallow water rivers? You know, they're both. They'll like deeper water rivers too. But, you know, I just explained, I don't think you were in here when I explained that whole thing, so you can go back and watch that, about high water and how flatheads have the tendency to go into smaller rivers during high water and then filter back into the main river, you know, during lower water periods. Love you, man. Brian B., he was awesome. Awesome to be around. Awesome. I'm lucky that I was actually able to go out there. But yeah, I mean, Avid, there's lots of flatheads in mid-sized rivers, but once you get down to that smaller river, they just kind of visit it during high water, visit it during pre-spawn, and then filter back out. That was one thing that was really hard for me to learn, but I did over years. You know, standing back, looking at the, you know, trying to see the forest, you know, despite the trees, and I was actually able to do it, and it wasn't all me either. I mean, I put this thing together with talking to some other guys that were like tournament pros, and, you know, talking with like legends, you know, that are dead now. I mean, jeepers, there was guys that was getting interviewed in Fisherman when I was still, you know, 16, 17, 18 years old, you know, and they would actually, you could call them. And now they would answer you once if you bugged them too much. And I heard from other people, or if you weren't like smart enough to be on their level, they wouldn't, you know, call you back. But I actually talked with, you know, Doug Stange and Toad Smith a few times. talked to Babe Winkleman a couple times. You know, and I'm not a starstruck person. I don't care. You know, if I don't even know who to think. If a movie star walked in here right now, I'd be like, "What are you doing here?" You know, even ones that I like. I don't really care about that stuff. But it was really interesting to talk to some of those guys, you know, back in the day, and you know, especially once I was involved in pro cats and stuff like that. They actually treated you pretty good. But I mean, it wasn't like I mean, Jim Moyer, he was kind of a pioneer in that cold water blue cat stuff, because really I mean, there might have been people doing it, but he was pretty much the first one to make that thing a known thing. I mean, and he was doing, what river was he on? He was on, I even fished it once, but I can't remember. It's a tributary of, it's a big tributary, but, oh, jeepers. It's by Clarksville, Tennessee. Can't even remember. But anyway, it was pretty interesting. But I mean, talking with those guys and reporting what I was finding and hearing their stories about what they were finding, it was kind of a lot better to be able to put that whole puzzle together. It was because really it was kind of a pioneering thing back in those days to actually figure that out. Because I mean, there wasn't a lot of winter fishing. I mean, it was summer fishing pretty much only. I mean, besides a few people. You know, the commercial guys, you know, guys that were in the warmer water period. But I mean, this colder water stuff was a little bit different. You know, 104 thumbs up. Awesome. It was the Cumberland River. That's right. Wild turkey. Jeepers, you must be old like me. Cumberland River. Yep. All right, guys, I am going to stop this chat. Merry Christmas, if I didn't tell you before, and Happy New Year to everybody. This has been awesome, and we'll do it again. Good night.